The Toronto Blue Jays just made another massive move that has Blue Jays Nation absolutely buzzing. And what this signing means for the rest of the offseason is going to blow your mind. ESPN's Jeff Passan just broke the news that Japanese third baseman Kazuma Okamoto and the Toronto Blue Jays are in agreement on a free agent contract. And this signing has enormous implications for literally everything else Toronto is trying to accomplish this offseason. We're talking about how this impacts the Bo Bichette situation, what it means for their pursuit of Kyle Tucker, whether Alex Bregman is still in play, and most importantly, whether the Blue Jays are actually building a legitimate World Series contender or just making moves for the sake of making moves. This isn't just another depth signing or organizational filler. Kazuma Okamoto is a legitimately elite hitter who's been one of the best players in Nippon professional baseball for years, and the fact that Toronto beat out other teams to sign him tells you they're serious about upgrading every aspect of their roster. If you want to understand who Okamoto is as a player, what he brings to this lineup, and how this signing fits into Toronto's broader championship strategy, you need to hear every detail of this breakdown, because this could be the move that puts the Blue Jays over the top. Let's start by establishing exactly who Kazuma Okamoto is and why Blue Jays fans should be absolutely thrilled about this signing. Okamoto has been a star in MPB since 2018, consistently putting up elite offensive numbers year after year. When you look at his OPS, on base plus slugging, over that span, the consistency is remarkable. 935 in 2018, 828 in 2019, 907 in 2020, 871 in 2021, 805 in 2022, 958 in 2023, and .863 in 2024. Those aren't just good numbers. Those are elite numbers that translate to all-star caliber production in most seasons. The guy simply knows how to hit at an extremely high level, combining solid batting average with excellent on-base skills and legitimate power. But it's his 2024 season that really showcases what Okamoto can do when everything comes together. At 29 years old, playing in his age 29 season, Okamoto hit .322 with a .411 on-base percentage. Think about those numbers for a second. A .322 batting average means he's getting hits in nearly a third of his at-bats, which is elite contact ability. But the really impressive part is that .411 on-base percentage, which is roughly 90 points higher than his batting average. That massive gap means Okamoto has excellent plate discipline, draws walks at a high rate, and rarely gives away at-bats. That's exactly the kind of approach that fits perfectly with the Blue Jays' David Popkins' offensive philosophy of working counts, getting on base, and creating opportunities for the hitters behind you. Now, Okamoto only played in about half the games last season due to injury, which is why his counting stats, 15 home runs, 51 RBIs, don't look as impressive as his rate stats. But when you project those numbers over a full 140-game season, you're looking at approximately 30 home runs and over 100 RBIs from a player hitting .320 plus with elite on-base skills. That's first division production from a middle-of-the-order bat, and it's exactly what Toronto needs to lengthen their lineup and create consistent offensive pressure. The scouting reports on Okamoto describe him as having a high floor as a corner infielder with potential for even more. His elite bat-to-ball skills mean he makes consistent hard contact, rarely strikes out, and can hit to all fields. Defensively, he's primarily a first baseman but has experience at third base and can even play some outfield in a pinch, though that's not his natural position. The defensive versatility is valuable because it gives manager John Schneider options for how to construct his lineup and defensive alignments based on matchups and rest needs. But make no mistake, Okamoto's value is overwhelmingly on the offensive side of the ball. You're not signing him for his glove. You're signing him because he can absolutely rake. Now, here's where the financial aspect becomes important and why Blue Jays fans should feel even better about this signing. We don't have confirmed contract details yet as of this recording, but based on comparable NPB players who've signed this offseason, the deal is likely to be extremely reasonable from Toronto's perspective. The closest comparison is probably Munetaka Murakami, another Japanese infielder who signed a 2-year, $34 million deal with the Cubs. If Okamoto's deal is anywhere in that neighborhood, let's say 2 to 3 years at $15 to $17 million per year, that would be an absolute steal for the production he's projected to provide. Fangraphs is projecting Okamoto to post an OPS in the high 700s in his first MLB season, which might actually be conservative given his track record and skill set. Even if he needs some adjustment time to MLB pitching, which most international players do, a 750-780 OPS from a corner infielder is solidly above average production. And if he exceeds those projections and performs closer to his NPB levels after adjusting, you're talking about a potential 850-plus OPS bat that cost you $15-17 million per year. That's championship-level value that gives Toronto enormous roster flexibility to pursue other premium pieces. The short-term nature of the likely deal is also strategically brilliant. If you're bringing in a player on a 2 to 3 year contract rather than a 5 to 6 year commitment, you don't have to feel pressured to play him regardless of performance just to justify the investment. If Okamoto comes over and immediately produces, fantastic. You've got an impact bat in the middle of your lineup for multiple years at reasonable cost. If he struggles with the adjustment to MLB and becomes more of a platoon or bench piece, you're not married to him for half a decade and you can pivot to other options without creating payroll problems. That kind of flexibility is invaluable when you're trying to balance win-now moves with long-term roster sustainability. Now let's address the elephant in the room that every Blue Jays fan is thinking about. What does this signing mean for Bo Bichette? This is where things get complicated and where Toronto's front office is clearly making some calculated decisions about roster construction and resource allocation. With Okamoto coming in as a corner infielder, Toronto now has something of a logjam in the infield when you consider all the pieces. You've got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first base on his massive extension. You've got Okamoto now presumably playing first or third. You've got Ernie Clement, who can play multiple positions, including second base. You've got Bo Bichette, who's indicated willingness to move to second base. You've got prospect Addison Barger, who needs playing time. And you've got other depth pieces who can contribute. The reality is that signing Okamoto makes it significantly less likely that Toronto brings back Bo Bichette, though it doesn't completely eliminate the possibility. If you're committing money to Okamoto to play a corner infield position, that's money and playing time that isn't going to Bichette. The financial aspect matters here too. If Okamoto is making $17 million per year and Bichette is seeking $25-27 million per year, Toronto might have decided they can get 75-80% of Bichette's offensive production at 60% of the cost while maintaining more roster flexibility. From a pure value perspective, that's not an unreasonable calculation, even if it means losing a franchise icon and fan favorite. The other factor is positional. If Bichette is moving to second base permanently and Okamoto is playing first or third, there's theoretically room for both players on the roster. But you'd then have an extremely expensive infield with Guerrero, Bichette, Okamoto, and whoever plays shortstop all making significant money. Is that the optimal allocation of resources? Or would Toronto be better served spreading that money across multiple positions, including a premium outfielder? The front office is clearly wrestling with these questions, and the Okamoto signing suggests they might be leaning toward the latter approach. Here's my read on the situation, and this is pure speculation based on connecting the dots. I think Toronto has gotten a strong sense that they're not going to be able to re-sign Bo Bichette, whether because his asking price is too high, because he's getting better offers elsewhere, or because the fit just doesn't work anymore with the defensive concerns and injury history. Rather than being caught flat-footed if Bichette signs elsewhere, they proactively went out and signed Okamoto as insurance. He provides similar offensive value, elite contact skills, high on-base ability, solid power, at a lower cost and shorter commitment. It's not a perfect replacement for Bichette, but it's a smart hedge that ensures Toronto doesn't have a gaping hole in their lineup if their longtime shortstop departs. But here's where things get really interesting. This signing likely means Toronto is going all in on Kyle Tucker. If you're not spending $200+ million on Bo Bichette because you've addressed the infield bat need with Okamoto, that frees up enormous financial resources to pursue Tucker, who's been Toronto's #1 target all offseason, according to multiple reports. Tucker is a different caliber of player than anyone else we've discussed. A legitimate MVP caliber outfielder who hits for average, power, gets on base, and plays elite defense. He's the kind of transformational talent that can take a good team and make them a legitimate World Series favorite. If Toronto's offseason ends up being Dylan Cease, Shane Bieber, Cody Ponce, Tyler Rogers, Kazuma Okamoto, and Kyle Tucker, that's not just a good offseason. That's potentially the best offseason in franchise history. You've completely overhauled the starting rotation with 3 impact arms. You've upgraded the bullpen with one of the best middle relievers in baseball. You've added a high-floor offensive bat in Okamoto, and you've landed one of the 5 best outfielders in baseball in Tucker. That's the kind of comprehensive roster upgrade that turns pretenders into contenders, and that makes you legitimate World Series favorites. The question is whether Toronto can actually close the deal on Tucker. He's going to command an enormous contract, probably something in the range of 10 years and $350+ million based on his age, production, and the current market for elite outfielders. That's a franchise-altering commitment that will shape Toronto's payroll for the next decade. But if ownership is serious about winning now while Guerrero is in his prime, while Cease is locked in for 7 years, while the competitive window is wide open, this is exactly the type of move they need to make. You don't half-ass a championship run. You either commit fully or you watch other teams win. Let's also talk about what this means for Alex Bregman, who was another name connected to Toronto earlier this offseason. With the Okamoto signing, I think Bregman is essentially off the board for the Blue Jays. You're not going to sign both Okamoto and Bregman to play the same positions. It's one or the other. And Toronto has chosen Okamoto, likely because he's younger, cheaper, and represents better value on a shorter commitment. Bregman is an excellent player, but he's 31 years old and will command $150+ million over 5 to 6 years. Okamoto gives you similar production at third base for half the cost and half the term. From a resource allocation perspective, that's the smarter play, especially if it enables you to then pursue Tucker without completely blowing past every reasonable payroll threshold. So where does this leave the Blue Jays roster as currently constructed? You're looking at an infield of Guerrero at first, Clement or someone else at second, a shortstop to be determined, possibly through trade or internal options, and Okamoto at third. Your outfield hopefully includes Kyle Tucker in left or right, with some combination of Dalton Varsho, George Springer, if healthy, and other pieces filling out the rest. Your catching is anchored by Alejandro Kirk. Your rotation is Cease, Gaussman, Bieber, potentially Manoah or Barrios, with Ponce and others providing depth. Your bullpen has Jordan Romano closing with Tyler Rogers and others in setup roles. That's a genuinely complete roster with no obvious holes if Tucker signs. Have the Blue Jays gotten better with the Okamoto signing? Absolutely. Unequivocally, yes. You've added a high-floor bat with elite contact skills who can hit anywhere in the lineup from cleanup to the 7-hole. You've added positional flexibility that gives your manager options, and you've done it all at reasonable cost on a short-term deal that doesn't compromise future flexibility. Is Okamoto better than Bo Bichette? Probably not, if we're being honest. Bichette has the higher ceiling and the proven track record at the MLB level. But Okamoto might represent 80% of Bichette's value at 60% of the cost. And in a sport where resource allocation matters enormously, that's smart business. The real test of this offseason comes down to whether Toronto can land Kyle Tucker. If they sign Tucker, this goes down as an A-plus offseason that positions them as legitimate World Series contenders. If they whiff on Tucker and end up running it back with basically the same outfield as last year while losing Bichette, this becomes a B offseason that improved the team but didn't take the leap necessary to compete with the Yankees, Orioles, and other AL powers. Everything hinges on Tucker at this point. One other player we haven't discussed enough is Stuart Berroa, the young outfielder who showed potential last season. Don't forget about internal development and players who might take steps forward. Maybe Addison Barger breaks out and becomes an impact bat. Maybe Varsho rebounds offensively and becomes the player Toronto thought they were getting. Maybe Spencer Horwitz continues developing and becomes a valuable piece. Championship teams aren't just built through free agency. They're built through player development, internal improvement, and guys stepping up when opportunities arise. Here's my final take on everything. The Kazuma Okamoto signing is a smart, value-oriented move that addresses an offensive need while maintaining financial flexibility to pursue bigger fish. It likely signals that Bo Bichette's time in Toronto is coming to an end, which is unfortunate from a sentimental standpoint, but might be the right baseball decision given the defensive concerns, injury history, and contract demands. It keeps Toronto firmly in the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes, which is where their focus should absolutely be. And it continues building a roster that's designed to win right now while Guerrero and the core are in their prime. If Toronto signs Tucker, this is a World Series or bust team. If they don't sign Tucker, they're a wild card team that might make noise, but probably isn't good enough to win the pennant. What do you think about the Kazuma Okamoto signing? Are you excited about what he brings to the lineup? Does this mean Bo Bichette is definitely gone? And most importantly, do you think Toronto can close the deal on Kyle Tucker and complete what would be a historic offseason? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because Blue Jays Nation needs to discuss where this franchise is headed. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to stay on top of every Blue Jays move as this offseason continues to develop, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our coverage. We'll have more updates as the contract details come out, as the Tucker situation develops, and as Toronto continues building what they hope will be a championship roster. This is an incredibly exciting time to be a Blue Jays fan, and we're going to be covering every angle of this historic offseason. Subscribe now, and let's watch together as Toronto tries to build something special. Go Jays, go!